There's a rumor going around. If you like this video and subscribe, you will unlock your own bloodline limit. Hi guys, this is the next part of What if Itachi Uchiha was reincarnated in the world of fairy tale? I hope you enjoy. Itachi walked into the guild hall, still looking beaten up from his fight with his counterpart in Edalis. Yet he had a smile on his face. Everyone in the guild looked at him in bewilderment. Hey, what happened to you? You look like you were hit by a train. Mikao said. No kidding, what the hell happened to you? Wakaba questioned while blowing smoke out of his pipe. Itachi ignored everyone and just walked up to the bar counter, taking a seat next to the master and guildarts. Wow kid, looks like you're beaten up. Even more than when you and I fought back at the S-class trials. Guildarts said and then smirked. Did you do something to piss off Mira? No, Itachi replied while still smiling. What are you smiling about, Itachi my boy? Makarov questioned with a look of confusion. Itachi usually doesn't smile that often, at least not for very long. Oh, they should be walking in any minute now, Itachi said and turned towards the entrance, wherein walked Lizana, who had changed her clothes. She wore a blue long-sleeved black striped shirt and green short shorts along with brown shoes. Behind her was a smiling Mira Jane, Elfman, Natsu, Gray, Urza, Juvia, Gajiel, Lucy, Wendy, Happy, Charles, and the newest Exceed Panther Lily. Lizana, Makarov uttered with wide eyes and sweat running down his forehead. And no way. Natsu said she died. Guildarts uttered just as shocked as the master. Itachi just smiled warmly, ignoring the pain he felt all over his body from his battle with Commander Itachi. Before he returned to the guild, he made a stop to a certain healer in the woods that didn't like people. There his wounds were treated and he now had bandages wrapped around his upper body, his upper right arm, and his lower left leg, but they were all covered and hidden from the view of everyone by his clothing. Which was the usual, black leather jacket with a large red fairy tale mark on the back, dark blue jeans, black shoes, and a white shirt underneath his jacket. Is this for real? Mikao questioned as everyone looked at Lizana in shock. Yo, you were alive? Wakaba questioned. Lizana had a small smile on her face and nodded, then to her surprise several of them jumped up with tears running down their eyes, ready to embrace her in a hug. Lizana, keep your filthy hands off. Elfman punched them all away with a metallic beast arm, being an overprotective brother. That's the same reaction we had, Natsu said with a sweat drop. Happy said. Oh, my, Mira let out an amused chuckle. What a relief. The guild's back to how it was. Lucy said. And it's like they don't know about the anima stuff at all, said Gray with a grin. It was the same for Juvia when Itachi-sama broke her free from the lacrima in Edalis. In any case, I'm just glad they're safe. Talk about insane. So, this is a wizard guild? Panther Lily questioned. Lizana. Makarov walked up to the returned guild member. Master. Lizana said with joy. I always had faith. Makarov said. Lizana questioned in confusion. One raised by a guild as a child of that guild. What parent wouldn't worry about their child? What parent wouldn't have faith in their child? We can have a leisurely talk about everything later. Same with the rest of you. Makarov looked over to Natsu. Sure thing, Gramps. In any case, I'm glad you're back. Makarov smiled warmly. Master, I'm back, I'm really back, aren't I? Lizana had tears forming in her eyes. Yes, this will always be your home. Welcome back, Lizana. Welcome back, Lizana. Everyone cheered. I'm home. Lizana cried and tackled down Master Makarov in a big hug. Master. Lucy said, worried for the master's health. Lizana-san, please calm down. Wendy said, also worried. Cry all you need, before the party begins. Makarov said as Lizana rubbed her cheek up against him while crying. Makarov grew 2 bumps on his head. Hey, you knew all along, didn't you, kid? Guildarts said to Itachi with a smirk, not looking at him as he was too busy with the sight of joy from everyone due to Lizana's return. Kid. Guildarts turned to Itachi and widened his eyes in shock. Itachi sat on the bar counter, however he looked lifeless, he wasn't moving and his eyes were closed. He looked so peaceful as the sunlight shined upon his smiling face. Several gasped when they saw how Itachi looked. Itachi, Makarov clenched his fist with his eyes closed as tears formed in his eyes. I don't understand. He said he was cured. Gray shook in shock, seeing one of his closest friends looking like he was dead. Oh, no, Mira uttered as a trail of tears ran down her eyes. Urza then noticed Itachi had his eyes closed with a smile on his lips. By the counter looking rather lifeless, she recalled what his original plan was and came to the worst conclusion. Oni-chan. Urza rushed over to Itachi while shoving everyone to the side and grabbed Itachi, who just opened his eyes slightly when suddenly Urza grabbed him by the collar and began shaking him. I thought you said you were cured. Don't tell me you lied. Don't leave us. I'm alive. I'm alive. Itachi tapped Urza's shoulder as she kept shaking him almost to the point of passing out. I just closed my eyes for a second. Itachi said as Urza embraced him in a hug. I was worried, after you told me your original plan, and I saw you looking lifeless, I just freaked out. Urza uttered and Itachi warmly smiled and rubbed the top of Urza's head. Well, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. I will be here to see you keep on growing stronger, and more beautiful. There is no way I will leave my dearest sister. Itachi said with a smile. That makes me so happy, I'm glad that your life is no longer in danger. Urza said as memories of her first meeting Itachi at the tower. Him rescuing her and promising Rob to take care of her, them walking together in the forest to find Fairy Tail, joining the guild together, going on various different jobs, Itachi leaving on a 2-year-long mission, Itachi returning to the guild, and everything that has happened with them until this very moment. It brought tears to her eyes. Come on now, let's celebrate the return of Lizana. Itachi said as he couldn't help but notice everyone staring at him. What? Did Urza just say you're cured? Makarov questioned. Yeah, why? Itachi replied. But how? I thought that the last herb you needed was, Makarov uttered. Long story, let me explain. Itachi went on about explaining what happened, how everyone was trapped in a giant lacrima in an alternate world called Edalus and how they all almost turned into nothing but magic power. Which was a shock for everyone as they all paled on how close they all came to death. Itachi then explained how he, Gajeel, Natsu, Lucy, Wendy, Happy, Charles, Urza, Gray and Juvia rescued them, how they found Lizana, and how she ended up there. He also explained that the last flower he needed was so common in Edalus that he just took one, mixed it with the medicine he got from Perliuzica, drank it, and after a few days he was cured of his terminal illness. You foolish brat. Makarov smacked Itachi upside the head. I thought you died. Are you trying to give me a heart attack? Makarov scolded Itachi. I'm sorry I look so dead when I close my eyes, Itachi said with a deadpan expression. Well, all in all, I'm glad you're healthy again. Makarov said with a smile. Not only has one of my children returned, but another one is cured and will live longer than this old man, Makarov said as manly tears formed in his eyes. Mira Jane looked at Itachi with tears forming in her eyes and she held her hands over her mouth to soften the sound of her crying. Thank goodness, Mira uttered in joy of not only her little sister's return, but for Itachi, her love, being cured. That settles it. We will party for Lizana's return. And Itachi's health, Makarov declared and everyone cheered. The next moment everyone cheered with mugs filled with drinks, raised high. And everyone had a smile on their face. The guild has changed so much. Lizana said in awe. Not as much as you though, Mira nay, Lizana said still remembering her big sister's bad girl persona. You really think so? Mira asked with a pure-hearted kind smile. I guess Fairy Tail will always be Fairy Tail. Lizana said with a smile, and then she thought of something. Oh, yeah Mira nay. Lizana went up to her big sister and began to whisper something. Itachi was across from the Strauss siblings, on the second floor. Enjoying strawberry cake with Urza who was feeling too much joy to even care that Natsu was causing a ruckus downstairs. Fighting anyone that challenged him, of course Urza's patience wore thin when a chair flew crashing into their cakes. Urza shook as she stared at the stain that used to be her cake, looking like she was about to cry. Oh, dear, Itachi uttered knowing what was going to happen. 3, 2, 1, Natsu. How dare you destroy my cake? And ruin my celebration for Oni-chan's recovery. Urza summoned forth a sword making everyone downstairs shake and tremble in fear. As the horror known as Urza jumped down to deliver punishment. Itachi smiled slightly as he heard everyone celebrating. Itachi, Mira's voice reached his ears, he turned around to face the silver-haired barmaid, smiling warmly at him. Thank you. Lizana told me what you did for her and everything, no need to thank me. I just wanted to help Lizana find her way home back to you and Elfman, and back to Fairy Tail. Itachi said as Mira walked closer to him and looked at him with a faint blush while avoiding his gaze. Is something wrong? No. I just wanted to say, thank you, for everything you have done for me and my younger siblings, for bringing us here, for giving me a reason to stay, for helping me with my powers, for comforting me when I thought I lost Lizana, and for bringing her back. Thank you. Mira gently wrapped her arms around Itachi's neck and sat on his lap, and to his surprise brought her face closer to his and connected her lips with his, kissing him. MMPH. Itachi widened his eyes as he felt Mira's soft lips pushing up against his, with a sweet flavor. Itachi still had a look of shock as Mira broke the kiss and backed her head back slightly while still having her arms wrapped around Itachi with a faint blush on her face. Woo. Way to go Mira nay. Lizana cheered, making the elder Strauss sibling blush even more. Way to go Itachi. You lucky bastard. Wakaba and Mikao shouted with a smirk each. Good job kid. Gildarts shouted, followed by a laughter. Atta boy. Makarov cheered with a chuckle. Mira. Itachi looked confused, not sure how to react to this situation, while Mira was blushing madly out of embarrassment and it looked like steam came out from her head. Itachi. You bastard. What do you think you're doing to Nei-chan? Elfman was just about ready to attack. Don't ruin our happy moment. Urza kicked him to the side, while the innocent girls like Lucy and Wendy had a blush on their faces. I can't believe they kissed, Lucy uttered. Me neither, Wendy uttered nervously. Juvia wished she and Gray-sama were this close. Juvia looked depressed. She had once again changed her style, looking slightly more like she did the first time they met her hair being a little different. I don't get it, Natsu said, looking as clueless as always. It was about time if you ask me. Kana said while chunking down a whole barrel of alcohol. I agree. Gray smirked. Mira was still blushing, unable to move from the spot. Itachi looked at her, still surprised. He noticed Mira's expression, which he found actually adorable. Then, to everyone's surprise and especially Mira Jane's, Itachi grabbed her by the chin and pulled her in for another kiss. Woohoo! Cheers were heard from the guild. Itachi broke the kiss and looked at Mira, who was staring at Itachi, with her big blue eyes, while blushing even more. Is it less embarrassing now that we both did it? Itachi asked, acting clueless to hide his true feelings. He couldn't help it. Mira Jane was like a light to his darkness. He had thought that ever since that one time she tried to leave the guild and he saw her beautiful silver hair blowing in the wind while she looked at him with those pure blue eyes. It's one of the reasons why he fell in love with her, that in her kind nature and love for her siblings. Yet he was afraid that his darkness would taint her light if she knew who he really was, a murderer. No, it isn't, Mira shouted while looking more embarrassed with a mixture of happiness. While Itachi kept his deadpan expression up. Alright salamander. And little girl. It's time for my Lily to fight your blue cat and white cat. Gajeel shouted, crashing down. Natsu questioned. Looks like someone's really out to get you. Lucy said with a sweat drop. Wendy uttered, looking rather pale. Why, you'll be okay, I think. Levi cheered. Go ahead. Make my day. Natsu shouted at Gajeel. Please don't make his day. Happy cried out. Just so you know, my Lily is the strongest, with a capital S. Gajeel declared as the two dragon slayers locked foreheads while glaring at each other. Well, Happy is a cat with a lowercase c, you jerk. Natsu said. I'd lose instantly. Happy paled. How pathetic. You're giving up before you even start. Charles commented with a smile. Someone has hope for me. Happy questioned with a blush. Forget it. Despite my appearance, I was a division captain in Edelus. Pointless fighting will only lead to you being injured. Lily said. Now that you mention it, Happy got depressed. Oh, you're surprisingly mature. Urza said to the little new Exceed. Or perhaps they're childish, Lily said, and then turned to his two fellow Exceeds. Anyway, let's be friends. Happy. Charles. Lily. Happy said. Charles hummed. Wendy looked relieved. Looks like they managed to take the attention away from us. Itachi said while Mira still sat on his lap facing him. Yeah, that was getting a little too much for me, Mira uttered, still with a faint blush from the fact that she kissed Itachi and he kissed her. You know you can get off my lap now, Itachi said with a small smile, and Mira finally realized that she still sat on his lap. Oh, my, sorry. She instantly stood up. No problem, Itachi assured and looked down to the big dust cloud in the center of the room below them with Natsu, Gray, Gajeel, Elfman and several fists sticking out from it. Flesh striking flesh with great force. Juvia said as she spotted Gray in the large pile. Juvia will join in too. Juvia was about to strip. Don't strip, Lucy shouted. Taking advantage of a chance to let loose isn't so bad sometimes. Freed said, looking to join in on the fight. That's more like it. Even Bixlow looked like he wanted to join in. Everyone, calm down, Wendy said as everyone kept on fighting. Somehow I knew this would happen. Lucy said. You can't have fairy tale without this. Lizana said, giving Lucy a little chuckle. Say, Natsu, what was this other me like? Makarov questioned. Edalus Gramps, Natsu questioned. Yeah, I'm curious, Makarov said. Now that I think about it, Natsu mumbled. You were the king, master. Itachi said, having walked down from the second floor. Really? Makarov questioned. Yeah, that's it. I thought he seemed familiar. Natsu said, having finally realized it. It's not that hard, they share the same voice after all, and have similar appearance. Itachi pointed out. Then what about me? Gildarts asked in anticipation. Your name never came up even once, it's possible you were a frog or fish or something. Natsu said, as none of them met Edalus Gildarts, or even knew if there was one. You're horrible. Gildarts shouted, feeling a little hurt. Natsu, what are you doing? Gray said, as he was still fighting like everyone else. Quit slacking off. Gajeel shouted. Act like a real man. Elfman shouted. Turning your back on a fight you started. Do you even understand the meaning? Freed said, when suddenly Natsu punched him across the face. Shut up. Good grief, Makarov uttered. Say, Gildarts, Itachi, do you think Mistogen is doing alright in Edalus? He is, he's become a hero there after all. Itachi said. Yeah, he was raised by this guild after all. Gildarts said, looking out at the rumble everyone was having. Of course, he's doing well. Gildarts then looked over to Itachi. Say, Itachi, HN. Itachi questioned. Now that you're cured, how about a fight with me to decide who the strongest in the guild is? Gildarts asked with a grin, and instantly the fighting in the guild stopped. They all looked at them with anticipation. Mira Jane stood with her sister, looked a little worried, not sure if Itachi should have such a dangerous fight right after being cured. Wendy. Itachi spoke to the short little dragon slayer. Yes, Itachi-san, Wendy questioned. Itachi removed his jacket and shirt, revealing his bandages wrapped around his muscular body. Use your magic to heal me. I need to be at full power for this. Itachi said with a smirk. Gildarts had a grin, and everyone gained an excited expression to witness what they considered the fight of the century. Awesome, Natsu cheered. A few minutes later, behind the guild, Itachi, who had been healed from his injuries by Wendy, as well as restored his chakra with a chakra replenishing pill he got from Commander Itachi just before he left Edalus, faced off once again after 8 years, the mighty Gildarts. Everyone from the guild had gathered, as well as several people from around town, had come to witness this showdown between these two titans. This is not a good idea, this is not a good idea, this is not a good idea. Makarov stressed over the property damage these two would cause and all that paperwork he would have to go through. Knowing you, kid, this will not be easy. And who knows how strong you have become after all these years. Gildarts grew serious as he released a ton of pressure with a white aura around him. Back then I was at a disadvantage as I was still adapting to the ether nano in my body. And my chakra had been reduced after fighting Laxus, Freed, Evergreen and Kanna. This time, I'm not only stronger, but I'm at full power. Itachi said as he released a blue chakra aura. He knew that it would eventually come to this, he didn't look forward to it, but everyone would be nagging at him if he turned the offer down. Which would be much more troublesome than fighting Gildarts. Let's get this over with. Itachi said and morphed his eyes into his Sharingan. As much as I'm against this, start. Makarov said. Itachi and Gildarts charged at each other with their fists raised. They both swung their fists, colliding with each other. Itachi exploded in a fiery explosion, creating a large cloud of black smoke. Gildarts leapt out from the smoke. So, you created a clone before the fight, huh? Gildarts said with a grin when suddenly wires wrapped around his body as two shurikens flew around him. The wires had paper bomb tags attached to them, they detonated, creating another explosion. Itachi landed in front of the fiery smoke. Gildarts, magic obliterates anything it comes in contact with. Even the most advanced magic spells are useless to his magic. Unless I use a direct jutsu like Chidori or Rasengan, I can't damage him. He seems to be unable to destroy my Susanoo or its Yasaka Magatama beads, judging by our last fight. He understands how to deal with illusions by lowering his power to 0 and bursting it back out. The one genjutsu I have that will be effective is Tsukuyomi. Amaterasu might also be effective, still I wouldn't risk using it in a sparring match. Other than that, physical force seems to be all that affects him. Itachi thought, planning a strategy in his head, while his eyes were narrowed and calculated. The smoke cloud burst away from a strong wave of power coming from Gildarts. Now this takes me back. Gildarts cracked his knuckles and neck. Itachi charged at Gildarts while a blue sphere formed in his right hand. Itachi also formed a tiger seal with his left hand and spat out a small wave of fire that merged with the Rasengan in his palm, making it a blazing vortex of chakra. Gildarts stomped his foot down, cracking the ground up to multiple cubes, almost cracking the ground beneath the audience that struggled to keep their balance up. Itachi leapt on from cube to cube towards Gildarts. Just when he was close, Gildarts threw a punch. Itachi's Sharingan rotated as Gildarts' moves became predictable to him. He ducked from the punch and slammed the Rasengan into Gildarts' gut. Blazing Rasengan. The burning fiery sphere of chakra dug into Gildarts' gut, sending him flying back, leaving a burn mark on his gut. Gildarts held his arm over his gut while smirking. That one hurt much more than the one you used during the trials. Naturally, I merged it with fire, and this time I have perfected it unlike last time. Itachi said. Hey. Gildarts smirked and threw a punch, sending a shockwave from his fist towards Itachi. He leapt to the side, dodging it as it flew across the sea behind the Guildhall. The ocean looked like it split in two for a moment, then it returned to normal. Gildarts is taking Itachi seriously this time. He's not holding back whatsoever. Gildarts has acknowledged Itachi as an equal. Last time during the trials, Gildarts had to hold back, but not this time. Makarov said as everyone stared in awe. Gildarts and Itachi are so cool. Natsu cheered with a wide smirk. Aye sir. Happy agreed. Gildarts is known for using brute force, while Itachi is more of a strategist. He takes advantage of his opponent's weaknesses and finds the weakness with their attacks. But I wonder if he can find any weakness in Gildarts' magic. Mira Jane analyzed. Let's see, it's a complicated magic to deal with indeed. But everything has a weakness, you just have to find it. Itachi thought and narrowed his eyes. For Gildarts' magic, its weaknesses, Itachi thought as Gildarts leapt at Itachi with his fist raised, and Itachi morphed his eyes into Mangekyo. Gildarts threw a punch filled with his magic power, but suddenly it was blocked by a red spectral skeleton hand. Spectral things like my Susanoo, his magic can't affect it. But if he puts in enough force, he can still shatter the Susanoo at certain stages. Itachi thought as cracks appeared on the spectral skeleton hand that blocked Gildarts' fist. That's the first weakness. Second, if he meets an opponent with more strength than him, such as that dragon, it can overwhelm him and his magic will have no effect on them, although only very few beings have that ability, a very complicated magic to deal with indeed. But not impossible. Itachi's Susanoo became a large spectral red skeleton that grew flesh, turning into a spectral humanoid. Itachi's Susanoo let out a violent roar, sending gushes of wind around it as its red aura flared violently around it. This brings back memories. Gildarts smirked and swung his arm back, clenching his hand into a fist. Gildarts and Itachi's Susanoo threw a punch at each other. Gildarts' fist collided with the massive spectral fist, sending shockwaves around the area. The fist on Itachi's Susanoo began to crack a little, while Gildarts struggled to not get pushed back. Itachi's Susanoo formed in one of its four arms a Yusaka Magatama beam. Yusaka Magatama. Itachi threw the spinning Magatama directly, crashing into Gildarts, creating a massive explosion. Itachi leapt back and deactivated his Susanoo. Itachi narrowed his eyes at the burning smoke cloud. Gildarts appeared behind Itachi and swung his fist into his back. Itachi suddenly vanished in a murder of crows that began circling Gildarts. Gildarts swiftly turned his body around and swung his fist to the side, and the fist was blocked by Itachi, who had used a kunai that broke in half. Itachi quickly placed his feet in Gildarts' face and jumped back. Fire style. Phoenix flower. Itachi blew out a barrage of multiple balls of fire and threw shurikens into them, merging them. The burning shurikens flew directly towards Gildarts. Gildarts stomped his foot down, bringing up a large piece of the ground, blocking the shurikens as they stabbed into the wall. When the earth wall crumpled, it revealed Itachi with another blue sphere in his palm. Itachi used Shunshin and reappeared above Gildarts and slammed the Rasengan into his back, sending Gildarts' body crashing to the ground, forming a small crater. Gildarts slammed his hand to the ground, sending a magic power through it, and the ground just beneath him, and Itachi exploded into multiple cubes. Itachi was sent flying off Gildarts. Itachi narrowed his eyes as he stared down upon Gildarts. Gildarts punched in the air, sending a shockwave of his punch towards Itachi. Itachi widened his eyes as the air punch crashed into him, making him vomit out a little blood. Itachi recovered from the air punch and raised his leg in the air as he flew down like a rocket at Gildarts. Is he crazy? There's no way he will be able to hit Gildarts like that. Gray said, considering the distance between Gildarts and Itachi. He has his ways. Urza commented with a smile, making Gray look a little confused. As Gildarts was about to jump back, Itachi vanished using Shunshin and appeared right in front of Gildarts and swung his foot, crashing down upon Gildarts' head, making the ace of Fairy Tail fall to the ground. Itachi leapt back and threw 3 kunai knives with paper bomb tags attached to them. They stabbed around Gildarts and exploded in a fiery explosion. Once the smoke cleared, it revealed Gildarts, standing, with a trail of blood running down his forehead. No frickin' way. Natsu shouted in shock, as this was the first time he saw anyone making Gildarts bleed. He made Gildarts bleed. He actually made him bleed. Happy shouted, just as shocked as Natsu, as well as everyone who didn't see Itachi and Gildarts fight 8 years ago, in the S-class trials. Itachi formed the ox, rabbit, and monkey hand seal and stretched his hand to the side, as lightning began flickering around it violently. Itachi began running towards Gildarts at high speed, and Gildarts punched his fist to the ground, separating them into cubes. Itachi leapt from cube to cube until Gildarts was in his sight. A cube flew between them. Gildarts smirked when suddenly the cube was cut in half, as all he saw was Itachi's lightning-covered hand directed at his gut. Itachi was bending down slightly and stabbed the lightning blade into Gildarts' gut. They both stood there, not moving an inch, when the audience noticed that Gildarts had grabbed Itachi's wrist, but the Chidori still had connected with Gildarts, leaving a cut. Gildarts didn't even flinch as his blood dripped from his gut into the ground. Itachi had managed to scratch him, leaving just a small cut. That's a dangerous move you got there. When did you learn that? Gildarts questioned. I have known of it ever since I saw my little brother use it. My eyes can copy others' techniques as long as I see the hand seals needed for them. Itachi said, referring to what the guild knew as his dead little brother. Itachi had told the people who asked him about his family that he had a mother, a father, and a little brother, but they all died when an assassin killed his entire family. So, you've known it for a while then? Gildarts questioned, as this was the first time he has seen Itachi use this move. Oh, well. Gildarts threw Itachi to the side. Itachi landed, but because of the force of the throw, Itachi began skidding back, dragging a little of the earth up with him. When he looked back up, Gildarts was in front of him with his hand directed at him. All crush. Gildarts sent his magic at Itachi in the form of an energy blast. The wave flew towards the ocean, splitting it in two. Itachi. Mira shouted in a worried tone. Relax. He should just be knocked out by that. Gildarts shouted. The dust gathered up from the blast cleared up, revealing a large red spectral warrior wielding a shield, and behind it was a bruised up, beaten Itachi on his knees, panting, his clothing slightly torn. The spectral warrior faded and vanished. Itachi stood up while panting and sweating a little. Not bad, kid. You sure react fast. Gildarts smirked. Yeah, and I'm fast with my hands as well. Itachi said and vanished in a puff of smoke. Huh? Gildarts questioned when suddenly up from the ground beneath him came a foot, kicking Gildarts in the chin, sending him flying up. Itachi, who still looked bruised up as it seemed he took some damage from that last attack, leapt after Gildarts from the hole and kicked him again further up, and kept on doing so. Then Itachi flared up in a red spectral aura. A red spectral warrior with legs formed around him, and later it grew a samurai-like armor around it and grew wings on its back. Gildarts widened his eyes as well as everyone else. Wow! Mira uttered in awe, seeing Itachi's perfect Susanoo. Just how far have you gone, Itachi my boy? Makarov uttered with a feeling of pride. It's even cooler up close. Natsu shouted with flames coming out of his mouth. Itachi's perfect Susanoo reached out to a sword around its belt. It drew out the massive blade with such force that the top of 3 mountains close to them was cut clean off. It's even easier to use with the Ethernano around me, Itachi thought as the Susanoo raised the blade over Gildarts. Game over, Itachi said, and the Susanoo swung its blade down upon Gildarts. They both crashed down into the ocean with the water parting away in the shape of a circle. Gushes of wind blew around the area. Makarov was gaping in horror seeing the mountain tops gone. Please don't tell me I need to do the paperwork for that. The perfect Susanoo faded and the parted waters gathered together again. 2 shadow figures leapt out from the ocean and landed back in front of the audience. It was Itachi and Gildarts, both of them wet, and Gildarts looked extremely beaten up. The only one who had beaten him up this much was that black dragon he met on his job. They both stared at each other, panting. Tsukuyomi Itachi gathered what he had left of chakra into one last attack. Everything around Gildarts turned black and white. Damn, Gildarts cursed with a chuckle. You truly were Fairy Tail's strongest, Itachi said as he had nothing but respect for Gildarts. But this is the end, Itachi said, claiming victory in the fight. Huh, the new generation will always surpass the old one, right? You, Natsu, Gray, Urza, Mira Jane, all of you seem to evolve faster, you will all become stronger and surpass us. Gildarts smirked. I admit defeat. Everything returned to normal as Gildarts fell to his knees, and Itachi raised his right arm high in the air, as the sun shined on the back of his hand, on his red fairy tail guild mark. Everyone looked in shock, some wondering if they were seeing what just happened. Itachi had won. He just beat Gildarts, Mikao shouted with wide eyes in disbelief, a look that was shared by many. Does that mean Itachi is our ace now? Wakaba questioned. I knew he could do it. Urza said with a proud look on her face. Awesome. Gray uttered in awe. That was awesome. Now Itachi. Fight me. Natsu charged with his fist covered in fire, but was stopped by Makarov's gigantic fist that squashed him like a fly. You know better than to fight someone who's just had a big fight. Makarov scolded and reverted his hand back to a normal-sized one. He walked over to Gildarts who was still on his knees, although he was smirking. You seem happy for someone who just lost their title as the strongest in the guild. What can I say? I like seeing the younger generation surpassing the old one. Makes the future look brighter. Gildarts said and let out a sigh. He then stood up and dusted himself off. Doesn't matter, I can still go on jobs title or no title. Besides, I'm still known as Gildarts of the West, so I got nothing to complain about. The two of them looked over to Itachi who was being praised by all the guild members. He had a small smile on his face although he looked a little uncomfortable. Itachi is without a doubt a skilled young man, is already one of the strongest people on our continent. Makes you wonder how far he will go when he gets older. Makarov said with a small grin. Let me guess, he's your number one candidate for the next master of the guild, isn't he? Gildarts asked. Yes, although you were close to that position as well. Makarov replied. Hey, yeah no thanks. That position doesn't really suit me. It fits more for the kid, he has the strength, the brains, the mental capacity to deal with all those bills and paperwork from the council. Gildarts smirked as Makarov had a shiver run down his spine at the mentioning of the paperwork and all the bills for property damage, oh god all those bills. Not to mention, kid has more love in him than anyone I have ever seen. Makarov smiled at that last comment. He sure does, that's the best quality a master needs. Love for his fellow guildmates, and comrades. The only person that maybe had more love than Itachi, was our first Master Mavis. Speaking of, will the trial be held where I think they are being held? Gildarts asked. That was the plan, yes. Speaking of, I have something I want to discuss with you. Makarov chuckled. Huh. Gildarts raised his brow in bewilderment. Later on, everyone went back inside to continue the celebration of Lizana's return and Itachi's health and victory over Gildarts. The party became so wild that everyone ended up falling asleep in the guild hall. Itachi was resting with his back up against a pillar with Urza resting her head on his shoulder. He smiled at his little sister, and looked over the guild hall and saw the Strauss siblings sleeping peacefully together, Mira with her arms wrapped lovingly and kindly around Lizana and Elfman, with his big arm wrapped around them which his sisters used as a pillow. And since Wendy had used up her powers to heal him for the fight, he was once again covered in bandages, same with Gildarts this time whom was passed out by the bar counter with the master. Things around here are peaceful, well at least more peaceful than it was back in the Element of Nations. I am truly grateful for this new life I've been given, although I would like to know why, and how Sasori and the others were involved. Itachi thought and then narrowed his eyes, remembering his fight with the puppet master as well as his little clue to why and how they ended up here. The most darkest blackest secret this world has. Then there was what his other self said. A young man with black hair wearing some black outfit, and a blonde-haired woman with a big bust. Itachi looked over to the celestial spirit wizard girl, Lucy. She's the only one I can think of that fits that last description. But that's impossible, she would have been a little kid at the time. Then again, her mother resembled her. Could her mother have been involved? In that case, who is the young man with black hair dressed in black clothing? Itachi thought and then looked into the palm of his right hand. And that black aura I had when I fought my other self, what was that? It felt cold and dark from what I managed to remember about the incident. Itachi thought when suddenly Urza twisted in her sleep so that her head fell down resting on his lap. Itachi had a small warm smile on his face as he stroked her red hair making the sleeping Titania smile a little. Morning in the guild hall Itachi had decided to try and find out what this black aura he had was, so he had begun to meditate. He's been meditating since everyone woke up. He was sitting with his legs crossed on a table while a blue aura flared around him. Everyone looked at him in bewilderment. He's been sitting like that for hours now, Gray commented. He hasn't even moved an inch. Levi said as mostly everyone were gathered around the meditating Uchiha. Natsu was kneeling in front of the meditating Itachi, waving his hands in front of his face, and clapping his hands really loud. Looks like he's asleep, Natsu said, then gained a devilish smirk. Hey, Happy, wouldn't it be really fun to see what Itachi looks like with a mustache? Natsu snickered with his blue cat companion. Maybe with a monocle too. Happy snickered. Try that and you're dead. Urza appeared between them with a scary aura around her. Sorry. They both replied in unison. Still, he's been like this now for almost the whole day, he hasn't even eaten anything. Mira said, looking a little worried. Should we try and wake him up? Elfman asked. I don't think he will like that, Elf Nichan. Lizanna said. He's probably doing some sort of training, right? Gray questioned, not sure what Itachi was doing like most of them. Out of nowhere, when everyone woke up, Itachi just walked up to a table, sat down with his legs crossed, and then he closed his eyes and let out a deep breath, and before they knew it he began to glow. Knowing him, it must be something like that, Master Makarov said while he sat on the bar counter. One must admire his concentration. Panther Lily commented. Yeah, although it's strange he hasn't gone to the bathroom, eaten, or anything. Gajil said. Maybe he's just sleeping. Happy flew right in front of Itachi's face, when suddenly Itachi twitched his eyes and grunted a little. Looks like he's waking up. Whoa, Happy said when suddenly he was blown back as the blue aura changed into a dark black aura that sent out powerful gushes of wind around the guild hall. What is this? Urza questioned, using her arms to cover her face from the wind. I don't know. Mira said, doing the same as Urza. This energy, it feels dark and cold, Gray uttered with sweat running down his forehead. When suddenly, to everyone's surprise, black markings started to grow on the right side of Itachi's face and a powerful dark energy was felt from Itachi. Not good. Makarov gritted his teeth and then smacked his gigantic hand down in a karate chop on the top of Itachi's head, breaking his concentration. The black markings faded, and the aura vanished as Itachi opened his eyes and began panting. What was that, Itachi? Makarov asked. I don't know, that's what I was trying to find out, Itachi panted. Are you okay? Mira asked, concerned, placing her hand on his shoulder. Yeah, I'm fine. Itachi stood up and jumped down from the table. Are you sure? Urza asked. Yeah, just a little tired. Itachi placed his right hand on his forehead. I think I will rest a little bit. Itachi walked towards the exit of the guild hall. I need to look into this further, whatever it is, it didn't feel good. I'm feeling nauseated, tired, I have a headache, I need to make sure if this aura is dangerous or not. Itachi thought with his eyes narrowed. In an unknown location, a water tank opened and out exited the puppet master Sasori. That felt nice. You know, you could just have run away, you didn't need to get yourself killed. The mysterious shadowy figure said. And risk him tracking me here. Besides, that's what these things are for, aren't they? So why worry? Besides, I wonder how you will do against him. Sasori said with a bored expression. For your information, I have a bounty to catch, several bounties. And if I happen to run into him, so be it. I couldn't care less about Itachi. The figure replied as he stepped into the light. You and your money. Seriously, Kakuzu. Sasori said as the figure was a tall man with tan skin color. And his arms, which was the only visible part of his body, was covered in black stitches. He wore the same clothing the Akatsuki members had under their robes. He wore a sweatband covering his forehead with his black hair hanging out loose, a black mask to cover the lower half of his face. His eyes were green and had no pupils. He had a very muscular build, and on his back were 4 different masks. Kakuzu grunted. By the way, Itachi told me something you might find interesting. Sasori said with a small smirk on his lips. What? Kakuzu asked, sounding a little annoyed. Apparently Hidan found his way to this world as well. But not the same way we did, he was summoned here by some spell. Sasori said. That big-mouth religious bastard is here. Kakuzu asked, definitely annoyed this time. Relax, Itachi most likely found a way to kill him or at least cut off his head. My people haven't heard anything about some guy killing people after asking them if they want to join the way of Jashin. Sasori said, and he could swear he saw Kakuzu smile slightly underneath that mask of his. I think I'm starting to like Itachi a bit. Kakuzu said. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. The next episode will be out soon.